Hi, I'm Dale Powell, and welcome to that Spirit of Quiet Days. I like to call these days that are after Christmas and when the new year is fresh, the quiet days. Now, I also realize, too, that there's times when they're not very quiet. News cycles can be very disturbing, and I realize there's a lot going on in the world, but I hope that you can settle back a little bit and enjoy some slowing down, because nature, in case you haven't noticed outside, nature slows down quite a bit in the wintertime. One of the ways to do that is to think back to a simpler time. You know, my set is a barn today, an old barn at that, because I was just thinking back on my grandparents. Now, I don't like to be one of these people that said, man, think about how rough they had it, but think about how rough they had it. You know, if you go back just a century ago to 1926, life was kind of rough. Some of the things that we take for granted today wasn't done, particularly in rural areas. I know the particular area that I live in, I wasn't alive at the time, but I learned they didn't get electricity until about 1947. And there were other parts of the township that I'm in that didn't get electrified until the early 1950s. So I know that life was not always the way it is now. But think about it. In the morning, I go into the bathroom. I don't have to get dressed and go outside to a cold outhouse. I don't have to go carry water or maybe chip the ice away to get water. I can do that. Think of the miracle of our modern bathrooms even. All waste products are flushed away easily. With the turn of a knob, you can get hot and cold water, all without basically any effort. That is really nothing short of a miracle when you think about it. Not only that, we can adjust our heat with just the touch of our finger. Lost my words there for a moment. But we can just turn the thermostat to where we want, how hot or cold we want it to be. It really is nothing short of a miracle. I constructed a little poem that I wanted to talk about how things used to be. One of my grandfathers was born in 1888. Another one of my grandfathers was born in 1898. My maternal grandmother was born in 1891. And my paternal grandmother was born in 1898. And my paternal grandmother used to refer to the old days as before the wires. Now, do you know what she meant? She was talking about before the fact that there are electric wires and telephone wires and now TV cable wires. She used to call it about before the wires. Now, I have a feeling we still transmit electricity through wires and things like that, but think about how many things now, some of the wires are even gone. That's how far we've come in really just a couple of generations. So I want to talk about what life on a farm might have been like early 1900s. Now, I am just going mostly on what my grandparents and my Aunt Jenny told me. Aunt Jenny, I'll talk about her another time, but she was a real influence in my life and one of the hardest working women I ever knew, but I'll have a lot of stories about her another time. I call this poem about those old days in the early 1900s, Winter Before the Wires Came, in honor of my grandmother, who used to always refer to the old days as before the wires. The fields lay bare, but work did not. When winter closed the door, the barn still called at the break of day. The stove still asked for more. No furnace hummed beneath the floor, no tap to turn for heat. You split the wood, you carried the coal. You couldn't warm your feet. Water hauled and ice knocked loose, hands cracked, knuckles burned. You learned by doing. Water hauled and ice knocked loose, hands cracked, knuckles burned. You learned by doing what was needed, not for what you wished or yearned. And night came early, dark and long, by lantern's narrow flame. You rested when the work was done, not when quiet came. They didn't speak of quiet days. There wasn't room for that. The work went on through cold and dark, through hunger, ache, and lack. So when our world feels loud and torn and peace feels hard to find, we take the break they never had and try to use them kind. Yeah, I'm very grateful for what they did. And I think back to when I was growing up. Some of the things that I went through would be difficult to kids today, but what I went through didn't compare to what a generation before me went through, and I'm sure a generation before that as well. Again, I don't take this as saying, look how good you have it. You should be thankful. No, look, when you're in the midst of difficulty, I don't care what it is, it's hard sometimes to sit back and be thankful. I was just thinking about the rush of the world and some of the things that are going on right now that are very unpleasant to just about everybody. But I thought some days are not for fixing or naming what's wrong. Some days we should just sit with the noise and let it realize we're not joining it. The world shouts at sharp edges, and it asks you to choose a side, to raise your voice or harden your face into something useful. But there's another kind of work, a quiet kind, where you keep your hands open, where you help anytime you can, and you refuse to let bitterness decide what your hands are going to shape. You don't have to call this hope, and you don't have to call it faith. It's enough to say, I'm here. I'm still breathing. I'm still capable of gentleness, even when it feels like it's not the thing to do. So today, just for one day, I like that line. Reminds me of David Bowie saying, we can be heroes for just one day. If you don't know that song, you need to check it out. But for one day, let you being a beacon of light, let that be enough. That's not an answer. We don't all have solutions. I don't have any solutions. But I can be stubborn. I can be stubborn enough not to let some of the noise that's going on in the world bother me. Oh, it bothers me, all right. It does. But I don't have to internalize it. I don't have to make that the way I react to everybody. I can still be a loving, kind person. That is the true spirit of quiet days. And how we do have a lot of things to be gracious for. An attitude of gratitude is one of the best things that you can have. And again, I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's so easy today. No, things are not easy today. Things are difficult. It has their own challenges. It has its own challenges. But we're living in some of the best of times if we will let them be. So why don't you sit back and think about it and enjoy these quiet days?